News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
We're back. We've just got a few minutes left this morning with you. Again, don't forget, top of the hour, 9 o'clock, Laura Ingram will be here with you on the air.
One of my favorite people in the media has written a story in the Roanoke Times.
Would that be Dan Casey?
That would be my favorite person in the media. I'm being sarcastic, but so Dan wrote an article about a couple in Roanoke County, and we've linked this story to newsguardians.com, who have purchased and put up wind turbines on their own property. And it talks about the fact that it's helping with their energy bills. It's reducing their carbon footprint, which is ridiculous, but that's their choice. But Mr. Casey talks about the fact that they had to jump through a lot of hoops because of the regulatory issues around. The county had a difficult time separating the regulations for a industrial wind turbine, which there was a lot of discussion about a couple years back, and a small-scale wind turbine that these people wanted to build on their property. So they managed to get it built, and it's according to Mr. Casey, it's the only one in the county. And I guess it's interesting because I think there's a perception that somehow a conservative person like myself would be opposed to this couple having a wind turbine on their property.
No, I'm working on trying to have a wind turbine on my property right now. What we're against is the government forcing you to have one, or the government taking money from people and then granting it to other people so that they can build one, or putting up these giant wind farms using federal subsidies under the guise that they're going to make any kind of dent whatsoever, especially relative to their cost and to what it takes and to their obtrusion into the community in saving the planet or even reducing electric costs.
No, I mean there were some concerns. I think there were valid concerns of citizens about having a 400-foot wind turbine right next to their property. Mm-hmm. I can see that. These things are relatively small, relatively innocuous, and they pose no harm to anyone. And there's no reason why someone shouldn't have that on their property. We're all about freedom, baby, and if you want to put a wind turbine on your property because you think it's going to help reduce global warming, well, go ahead and do it.
I wouldn't do it because you think it's going to reduce global warming. I would do it because you have a potential to get off the electric grid and become self-sufficient, which is a great reason.
Better reason, but that's not, whatever the reason they want to do it for. They want to do it because they worship a goat. And the goat likes wind turbines. That's fine.
Tune in tomorrow for our deep research on how goat worship leads to wind turbines.
So whatever the reason they want to do it, it's their property. As long as they're not hurting somebody else with what they're doing on their property, they should be able to do whatever they want to on their property.
They should. So we're all for it. In this case, though, I do have a problem because I'm reading the story here, and it says setting up a small wind project is no easy endeavor. The McCallums first got the idea in 2004 when James Madison University was offering a grant for such a project. Now, I'm wondering if the James Madison University grant was from private funds or from public funds. If these are from public funds, then hence here once again is wherein the problem lies with us, is using government to force people to turn over their money in taxes so that they can send it back out to other people to manipulate their behavior, which may or may not be the case here. But essentially, because of that grant being available, they decided to try this and found that the regulatory situation was so abusive that it took them 7 years to get this done. So, and I think it's fitting here that what I understand to be the politics and the policy of Dan Casey actually lead to the regulatory situation where a family like this has trouble doing something they want to do with their own private property, and the thing they want to do is the very thing that people like Dan Casey supposedly support. It's so fitting.
Well, I think he would probably come back and say, well, you guys were opposed to those wind turbines, and you wanted regulations on those. Well,
No, I didn't.
Well, you didn't.
No, what I said is if they're not using public money and we're not giving them grants and we're not turning over people's tax dollars to them, they ought to be able to buy the land, put up a turbine, and run a wind farm, as a private endeavor to make money or to power their houses or whatever. My objection to the Roanoke County wind farm they wanted to put up on the mountain was that it was government subsidized, and nothing that they were claiming about that project was the way it was going to turn out.
Well, the funniest part about that whole industrial wind turbine story was the fact that as soon as the federal grants dried up, the interest from Invenergy for putting those wind turbines sort of dried up with it.
Exactly. And that was our point all along, was that it wasn't about producing the electricity and having the result that all the people trying to sell us on that was. It was the fact that since there were grants and free money from the government involved, the companies doing it made a ton of money on the front end and then left a community with a wind farm that was going to break down, be expensive, and be obtrusive in their community, not work, kill birds, and every other thing. And the company would be long gone and not there'd be no responsibility for what they did.
And this is where we differ a little bit, though. I think you could make a case that a 400-foot tall wind turbine next to your property, especially if you live close to it, could be troubling.
You could.
You can make. Now, I know in your no zoning regulation world where you don't care about that stuff, you would call that the price for freedom.
I do
think.
care about that stuff, and if there becomes a problem, that's what the civil court system was set up for. We weren't designed to have a government that heads off at the pass everything people do around each other because of the potential for something to happen. So therefore, we're so overregulated we can do nothing. If there's a problem, there's a place to handle that, and it's not in giving government the power to tell you what to do on the front end. That's where I'm at with that.
But I also think Dan has a bigger picture here. He's looking to it. He wants to show how stupid the regulations are, and he's going to be pushing for those bigger wind turbines at some point when the federal money comes back.
I would bet money that he supported the very politicians that supported the very regulations that he's now railing against. So
you get what you get.
You get what you get.